Okay, let's dive right into this. Today, we are looking at a film that literally altered the landscape of global cinema. I'm talking, of course, about Satyajit Ray's 1955 masterpiece, Pather Panchali. But, in this explainer, we aren't just going to look at it as a brilliant adaptation of a famous Bengali novel. We're going to examine it as a cinematic triumph that is deeply, fundamentally rooted in female resilience. As we go through this, we'll uncover how the stories of the women, who are so often sidelined in the broader discussions of this film's protagonist, Apu, actually form the very lifeblood of the entire narrative.
Here's our roadmap for today's explainer. First, a neorealist spark. Second, Song of the Little Road. Third, the women of Panchali. Fourth, framing rural realities. And finally, number 5, the Kash grass symbolism. All right, kicking things off with Section 1, a neorealist spark, global inspiration for a Bengali masterpiece. Now, to really understand the roots of Pather Panchali, we actually have to start far, far away from the lush, rural settings of Bengal. We need to set the scene in London, in the year 1950. 99. Just take a second to let that staggering number sink in. That is the exact number of films a young commercial artist from a distinguished Bengali intellectual family watched during a 6-month stay in London while he was working for an ad agency. His name was Satyajit Ray. Now, he was already a massive film enthusiast who had founded a film society back in Calcutta, but this intensive, obsessive period of viewing, this acted as his ultimate cinematic awakening.
And this brilliantly illustrates the historical convergence that made this whole film possible. Bibhutibhushan Bandyopadhyay had published his beloved novel Pather Panchali way back in 1929, but it wasn't until Ray sat in the Hampstead Everyman Cinema in London and watched Vittorio De Sica's 1948 Italian neorealist masterpiece Bicycle Thieves that all the pieces finally fell into place. Seeing Bicycle Thieves was a total game changer. It provided the exact stylistic model and the absolute inspiration Ray needed to finally bring his own project to life. To really grasp what Ray took away from neorealism, look at this beautiful metaphor from French film critic André Bazin. He basically compared classical, conventional realism to a purpose-built bridge made of bricks, right? A bridge designed specifically to get you from point A to point B. But neorealism, he said it was like stepping stones in the riverbed. The stones are just there. They don't have some pre-given narrative purpose, but they get you across the river nonetheless. Ray completely adopted this exact vision. A cinema of deep observation, capturing reality exactly as it is, without forcing some artificial plot onto it. Moving on to Section 2, Song of the Little Road, from page to screen. With that global neorealist lens in place, let's transition our focus away from Europe and travel to the heart of rural Bengal, specifically to the village of Nishindupur, where our story actually takes place. Now, the title Pather Panchali translates to Song of the Little Road, but let's zero in on that word for a second. Panchali. A Panchali is a traditional Bengali folk narrative, and historically, it's a form of storytelling that's frequently recited or sung by women. So the crucial point here is that this film, which is so often celebrated just as the coming-of-age story of a young boy named Apu, is actually inherently anchored by a female subculture. It's a narrative framework rooted entirely in the communal storytelling of women. Which leads us perfectly into Section 3, the women of Panchadali, the unsung heroes of Nishindipur. Just take a look at how the women are gathered here, sharing this communal space. Ray utilizes the very essence of that Panchali tradition to show us these quiet moments. Through their shared stories, their gossip, and their reflections on everyday hardships, Ray gives voice to the unspoken desires and the shared resilience of these marginalized characters. It's in these exact domestic interactions that the actual fabric of the community is maintained. It's absolutely crucial to the story. And this brings us to the unsung heroes of Nishindipur. Because while the broader story does ultimately follow the boy, Pather Panchali is profoundly shaped by 3 central female figures: Sarbajaya, Durga, and Indir Thakran. Let's break down who these incredible women actually are. First, you have Sarbajaya, the mother. She is the sheer embodiment of endurance. She bears the immense, crushing pressure of keeping her poverty-stricken family alive while her husband is away. Then there's Durga, her teenage daughter, who symbolizes this incredible, rebellious, youthful exuberance and a really desperate desire for freedom. And finally, Indir Thakran, the frail, elderly aunt. She embodies the marginalized elder in a patriarchal society, yet she navigates her highly precarious existence with profound dignity, unbelievable resourcefulness, and even humor. They aren't mere extras in Apu's story. Their emotional labor and survival skills are the vibrant, struggling heart of the entire household.
All right, Section 4, Framing Rural Realities, Visualizing the Female Experience.
What really makes Ray a master is that he didn't just write these women into a script, he used specific, highly deliberate camera techniques to make you, the audience, physically feel their distinct realities. The cinematography itself basically becomes a tool for empathy. Just notice the stark contrast in how the mother and the daughter are filmed. When we're in Sarbajaya's world, Ray uses medium and close-up shots with a completely static camera. It emphasizes her wary expressions and creates this almost suffocating feeling of confinement, which perfectly mirrors her incredibly heavy, gendered emotional labor. But when we shift over to Durga's world, the camera literally breaks free. Ray uses extreme long shots and sweeping tracking movements to capture her running through nature, visually translating her wild spirit and her connection to the wider world outside the home.
Now, what's really interesting about this extreme long shot, taken from a top angle, like a bird's eye perspective, is how we see Durga playing so joyfully in the rain, but her tiny figure set against that massive, vast landscape sharply contrasts her little, happy moments of freedom with the incredibly harsh, underprivileged limitations of her actual life. She so desperately wants to connect with a wider world, and it's a desire that makes her eventual fate so deeply, deeply tragic.
And then, of course, there is the elderly aunt, Indir Thakurun. For her, Ray deployed a different technique altogether: shaky, handheld camera work. By doing this, Ray visually translates her precarious, super fragile position within both the family and the wider community. You got the sense she is constantly on the verge of being pushed out. And it all culminates in that incredibly poignant scene where Apu and Durga discover her dead body in the bamboo grove. It's a massive moment. It's their very first highly jarring encounter with death. Finally, Section 5, the Kosh grass symbolism, poetry meets reality. As we move into our final section, we're going to transition from the micro-level human drama of these women to what is arguably one of the most iconic and majestic visual metaphors in all of cinema, the sequence in the Kosh grass. But before we analyze the sheer poetry of the scene, let's appreciate the often hilarious reality of filmmaking. Ray actually chronicled his absolute despair during production in his book, Our Films, Their Films. So they shot half the scene in this beautiful sea of fluffy whiteness. They come back the very next Sunday to finish it, and it was just brownish dirt. A local peasant had to inform a very, very puzzled Satyajit Ray that the enchanting Kosh grass is actually a prime snack for cattle. The local cows had quite literally eaten his set.
Okay, jokes aside, let's move on and see how this sequence builds into pure cinematic genius. In this scene, Apu and Durga wander into this enchanting forested canopy of white grass. It feels timeless, almost magical, right? But then they suddenly stop to inspect this humming electrical power pylon, a stark metal intrusion of the modern world. Suddenly they hear a sound, and they break through the grass, running full speed toward the sight of a massive black locomotive just hurtling across the landscape. Which leaves us with a pretty profound question to end this explainer on. When that train crashed through the timeless beauty of the Kosh grass, literally bridging nature with startling modernity, what was Ray actually trying to tell us? Was this the hopeful, exciting march of progress for a new world generation? Or was it the brutal, violent interruption of a quiet, reassuring past, signaling a massive transformation that would irrevocably alter the lives of these women, this family, and their entire community? It's exactly this tension that makes Pather Panchali not just a great film, but a living, breathing masterpiece. Thank you so much for exploring it with us today.